Hi besties, my name is Angie, this is my channel, maybe I'll read today, and I'm forcing myself to be as casual and as comfortable in this video as possible because I'm recording this a few days after posting that Sailor Moon video, and that Sailor Moon video popped off. A lot of views, a lot of comments, a lot of subscribers. It's a little overwhelming for me, and so if I stopped looking at comments, I'm not trying to be rude, I just have anxiety. So all that to say is thanks so much for giving me that attention. Don't really know what to do with it. I'm feeling kind of weird, and I'm kind of feeling like I'm recording my first video again. I feel like I have all these new eyes on me and I don't know what to do with myself. So these are the vibes of this video, and that's just what we're working with. Today is gonna be a fun video because we are preparing ourselves for the Jante's Inferno readathon, which is a readathon hosted by Jan, and actually I need to get my materials because I came so unprepared. That's how nervous I am today to be recording this. It's like the very first time, or whatever Madonna said that one time. BRB, I need to get my shit together. We're going to be doing the Jante's Inferno readathon. It goes from February 6th to February 16th, so by the time I post this, you still have time to figure out if you want to join. I'm also going to include Jan's announcement video in the description below so you can get all of like the actual full details. But a really brief summary is that we're kind of following Dante's Inferno. There are 9 prompts, 9 circles of hell, and the point of this readathon is that we are trying to escape hell. So we start from level 9, and for each prompt we complete, we move up a level until we are in purgatory and eventually leaving. And I just thought it was really fun, and I love to gamify reading, and I love to have a good time, and so now here we are. So ideally, hopefully, fingers crossedly, I'm going to be doing a vlog for this readathon, and I think the TBR part of a vlog can be like one of the more tedious parts. So instead, I'm doing the TBR part in this video. We're starting at circle 9. The 9th level of hell represents treachery, and basically people are encased in ice and tortured and not having a good time. So the prompt is read a book that's set in winter or has snow on the cover. For that, we're going to be reading Moon of the Crusted Snow by Wabgisheg Rice. This is a horror dystopian kind of thing where we basically follow a small community in the winter. They're running out of food, they don't have a lot of power left, and then one day some people show up and then weird things start happening, ? I've heard really good things about this book. I know there's a sequel coming out eventually, and I'm just excited to read a book that I own for once. Circle 8 represents fraud, and in the 8th circle of hell, souls are put in a pit of darkness and basically tortured forever. So Jan's prompt for this is just to read a horror thriller book. That's it. We're going to be reading The Reformatory by Tanana Reeve-Dew. This is a horror book, obviously, that follows a young boy who gets sent to a reformatory school in the Jim Crow South. This boy is not just any ordinary little boy because he can actually see ghosts, and that has been a huge comfort for him growing up because he lost his mother at a young age. But when he's at the school, he starts seeing like the truth of the school and what actually happens to the boys who are sent here. So it becomes kind of like a race against time, him trying to figure out the truth of the school, but also a race against time for the family who is trying to get him back home. I'm excited to read this book. This is also a book that's featured on my 2024 priority TBR, so I'm especially excited to read this book and a couple of other books listed here because my 2023 priority TBR was not super successful, and I really want to make 2024 more successful, and this readathon is going to help me. Thank you so much, Jan. Circle 7 represents violence, and in this circle, souls are drowned in a lake of boiling blood. So the prompt for this circle is a vampire book or with blood on the cover, and I don't own a physical copy of this book. I have a Kindle version that I got like forever ago. But for this prompt, we're going to be reading The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. Like I mentioned, started reading it forever ago, and then for whatever reason, I just stopped. I don't remember disliking it. I actually really enjoy Grady Hendrix's works. I think he does a really great job of blending like comedy and horror and like absurd and disgusting in a way that's just like fun. But for whatever reason, I softy enough this, And now's my time. Now's my moment. I'm gonna pick it up again. But basically the plot of this book, from what I remember, is that we follow a group of women who start a book club, and this like weird kind of like grimy but a little sexy guy like moves into the neighborhood, and like weird things start happening, and he is a vampire and he starts messing up their lives, so they have to slay him. I think that's it. I think that's the general idea. But knowing Grady Hendrix, I know he probably adds like another element of like grief, trauma, or something to that effect, because that's kind of what he does. Circle 6 represents heresy, and in this circle, souls are entrapped in a flaming pit. So for this prompt, Jan wants us to read a hot pick, something popular, and or a new release. So for that, we're kind of doing a little bit of both, because we're going to be reading Rouge by Mona Awad. This came out in 2023, I think, and it was also really popular when it first came out. Like, I remember seeing this book everywhere, and I had pre-ordered it because I really enjoyed Bunny, and then I just never pick it up, because that's kind of like what happens when you pre-order a book. You're so excited, and then by the time it comes, you're already doing other things, and then it kind of just like falls to the wayside. Rouge is about a woman who loses her mother, and she always had like this like rocky relationship with her mother. Her mother was super into like beauty and skincare, etc., etc. And I think at her funeral, the daughter finds out that like her mom was actually part of a cult, ? And so I think it kind of becomes something of a, did my mom die naturally, or is it because of this cult kind of investigation? I think. Maybe. I mean, that's how I would write this book if that was like the prompt that I was given. I've also been told that this is kind of like Snow White adjacent, and that's really all I gotta say about that. Circle 5 represents anger, and in this circle of hell, basically souls are stuck in this like endless battle, fighting in a war forever and ever. And so this prompt is to read a book with a battle or war or anything with a knife to throat, enemies to lovers kind of situation. I don't read a lot of romance, so we're ignoring the second half of that prompt, and we're going to focus on the battle and the war. And this prompt was actually a little bit of a struggle to find a book for initially, because when I think of battles or wars, I think of like fantasy books, which I don't read a lot of anymore, or I think of like history books, and history books aren't really good for vlogging material, is what I learned in the past. As much as I love to read history and nonfiction, not a lot of people care. So I was really like going through my books trying to find anything. And I came across Between Two Fires by Christopher Buehlman. And I was like, hey, maybe this could work, because there's a literal knight with a sword on the cover. And so this book is a medieval horror, which is really fascinating to me because I don't think I've ever read a medieval horror before. But basically we follow this knight as they're in medieval times, and there's like this ongoing war between like humans and demons or something like that. And this was also a part of my 2024 TBR. So really excited to be making these moves and to be making this progress. The next circle represents greed. Souls are consumed in a pit of smelting gold. For that, the prompt is to read a book you paid full price for. And for that, I had endless choices. I love buying books. It is my biggest weakness. But in the spirit of like Jante's Inferno, being in hell, horror, like spooky kind of feelings, I decided to choose Candelaria by Melissa Losada Oliva. I'm actually not entirely sure if it's a horror book or if it's like a horror literary book, but the reason why I think it fits with this readathon's like whole jam is just because of like the art style. In the back there's this like little hand. It just feels right to me. We're actually following the grandma, and she goes on this like journey. I don't know how expansive this journey is, but she goes on this journey to get all of her granddaughters together because the world is ending, I think. The next cycle represents gluttony. The actual like circle of hell for this doesn't really have anything to do with food, if I remember correctly. I think Jan in her video mentioned that it had something to do with like being chaste, but the prompt for this is related to food, because like the most common thing people think of when they think of gluttony is like anything food related. So similarly, the prompt is to read a book with food involved, either on the cover as a major theme, maybe it's like a character's career, etc., etc. It just has to be something related to food. So for that, we have Cursed Bread by Sophie McIntosh. This book is also a book that I have very little knowledge of. This was 100% a cover buy for me because it just looked really good. What I do know is that we follow a woman who works in a bakery, and she becomes obsessed with this young couple who moves into the neighborhood, and she kind of like manipulates their life so that she's always involved with them. The second circle of hell represents lust, And in this circle, souls are endlessly blown and spiraling in the winds of a violent storm. But the prompt for this is pretty straightforward, a book with any semblance of romance. So for this, I actually have two options. I have one that I currently own, which is Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda Lowe. I think this book takes place in like San Francisco in like the 1930s. And we follow a girl who is like coming of age, figuring out who she is, who meets another girl, realizes that she's gay. And so I think it's a romance, but I think it's also kind of like a tragic romance, the way that most historical romances are. I'm not entirely sure. But I also have the option of The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. It's like a ghost romance. This woman is a ghostwriter, no pun intended, and she has to go back home because there's like a death in the family. And when she's there, she meets a ghost and they fall in love, I think. So for the whole theme, for the whole like vibe of ghosts, death, hell, spirits, I really want to read this book. But last time I checked on Libby, it was on super hold. And so I don't know if I'm going to be able to get it in time. So if I can, we're going to be reading The Dead Romantics. If it's still unavailable during this readathon, we're going to be reading The Last Night at the Telegraph Club. The last prompt and the last circle actually represents limbo. It's kind of like purgatory. And the punishment for this is that souls are kind of stuck. So for this prompt, Jan just really wants us to get out of hell. This prompt is probably the easiest, but it's also probably going to be the hardest because it's just read one more book and then we're out and then we're free. And I actually don't have a book set for this prompt because one, I don't know if I'm going to make it this far. It'll be a miracle if we get out of hell together. Two, I feel like because it's so vague, because it's so open, I don't want to commit myself to a specific book because I feel like by the time I go through an entire TBR, I'm going to be in a really like mood ready kind of feeling. So this is my wild card. I'm just going to pick up whatever book catches my attention. So that's it. That's my TBR. Like genuinely super excited about this readathon. I think it's going to be really fun. And it's also kind of during my birthday week. And so I have birthday plans. I have things I'm going to be doing, places I'm going to go, which in one hand is going to make the vlog really interesting, and in another is gonna give me even less time to read. So we're gonna see how it goes. We're gonna see how far I make it. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you have a great day. And I guess I'll see you in hell.